And I think we're live. Okay, so hey everybody, welcome. We're going to do a technical sync on the plan for the create-pkg package. So this is an effort by the package maintenance working group, and I guess we could call it in partnership with NPM to help advance the package initialization workflow. So basically there's been some requests for additions to NPM init in the past where it's just hard for NPM to get that into the CLI in a timely fashion. Things like the type field, things like exports. There's just a lot of things moving in the node ecosystem where it touches the package JSON, and it'd be just better if there was some community ownership, especially with the efforts that the package maintenance working group is doing. We think that to really do it well, we need to provide tooling to help people get set up. So the idea is sort of to combine all of those efforts into a interface where people could run npm init pkg. That would then come with the ability to set up basically all of the good opinions the package maintenance working group has, and then some other, foundational opinions, just like things like from node core, like, you should have a main field, or, just the basic stuff like repository, and really giving people like a pretty good workflow around that. So that's sort of where the idea came from. And then what I was hoping we could have today, since we laid out sort of high level goals last time, which maybe would also help to quickly reiterate those. But I know we kind of did on the package maintenance working group call. So if maybe anybody has questions on the high level goals, we can start there. But then after that, I'd like to start really drilling in on how we're going to do it, how we're going to execute, who's going to be involved. Like let's try to come away from this meeting with like a really solid plan for the next couple of weeks to try to get some solid work done on it. I don't know who all's been involved in any of our other technical calls like this, but almost all of them have left with, you will open a PR, it will contain these features, is sort of the way we've left. So like for the will I break you, the support package, basically our first technical call sort of left with, here is our MVP feature set, and here is who's going to work on it. So I'd hope we'd leave this call with something similar. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so let me paste the issue in. Or does everybody have the issue that where Darcy outlined all the stuff we talked about last time? Here, it's issue 404, which is not maybe, yeah, thank you, which is maybe not the luckiest number to have gotten, but we'll make sure this work is not missing. So anyway, so I'll just share my screen so we all have it up. Share. Okay, so our two top level goals are to provide a tool that has sane package defaults. So this includes our sort of more opinionated ones, but also I think should probably include like what npm init comes with today. And then we might even end up wanting to work with like, the modules team to figure out what is the right exports to define by default, things like that. And then the secondary goal is to have the tooling we provide be really nice for people to extend, build on top of. We want to interop well with the communities who should leverage this tool, right? So that would mean, and these are things that, maybe it's not clear exactly what I mean there. So like there's existing package scaffolding ecosystems. There are big ecosystems like Create React app, right? There's a lot of prior art in the like, how do you get your project set up? The goal would be that the tool that we have interops well with those ecosystems so that people aren't like having to just re-implement all of our opinions in their like scaffolding tool of choice, right? So we kind of laid out sort of the three ways you might interact with this tool. So the first two are like, if you're going to initialize a package, you would use it from the CLI. So actually, and we should add here like npm i-g probably as well. But basically, we'd have a CLI which you could run, which would run you through these things, but also offer a JavaScript interface which you can import and then call. So this would be the way that you would, maybe import into a Yeoman generator and then execute our business logic, but then have the Yeoman generator do all the rest of your stuff, or plop or whatever the other thing is. So does anybody have questions on sort of the high level goals, or think we need to maybe add or change them?
I actually had one quick question. It's more maybe it's just me, because I think everybody else here is from NPM or something like that. But is there a way to establish like where the kind of the cutoff is between npm init and this tool you mentioned at the beginning? Whether, which is understandable, like keeping npm init slim and tidy, and as opposed to just, ending up absorbing all of these. Like, is there, I guess, is there that kind of line in the sand where it's like, okay, this is where npm init will go up to, and then at that point, we stop wanting or needing to have opinions. And so this is where otherwise, like, I guess, what would prevent us from, say, taking something that might be important, like a module or an export, and just say, make it part of. Obviously, I guess the first thing is like, then npm init just becomes like 50 million questions. So is that, I guess, is that part of it, or is there a more technical, other than just complexity, or maybe that would just help frame it, maybe just for me, I don't know.
I would prefer to let NPM folks speak a little bit for that. I have an opinion, but I'd rather hear theirs first.
Sorry, I'm doing three things at once here. Can you just quickly reiterate the question?
How about I will slightly share my opinion then as a part of reiterating the questions, so that we save a little bit of time there.
Yeah.
So npm init is very basic, and I think should stay very basic. I see that sort of as the minimum viable package definition, but I think in the real world, people need a lot more than that. So my opinion would be that the line between npm init and this is pretty clear. And it's that npm init just provides effectively what it does today and doesn't really evolve all that much in the long run. Maybe like the small additions once we really stabilize them in this realm. But this one is just, as you can see in this list of things that we should scaffold, way more robust, right? So the idea would be, yes, this one has a million questions, whereas npm init doesn't. So that's where I see the line. So the question was, where is the line between npm init and package, create-pkg?
Yeah, so I think Wes has it right and I think how this came about also is that npm init like allows for people to write template packages so that they're like templates, so that init can, so any package that starts with create dash as that prefix, you can essentially run npm init and then the name after that prefix, right? So like create React app, actually when you write npm init, all you have to do is npm init React app, right? So like this was kind of like we saw an opportunity where there was the create-pkg, and as we were getting the pkg JS sort of org together, I saw an opportunity for this group to have its own template, for this group who's creating these standards to have their own template, and for npm sort of like the npm project not to be a blocker for, let's say, adding features, functionality, and net new fields, let's say, to that default. Right now, again, like as Wes said, it's very pared down if you run npm init, and I think we will probably want to keep it that way. And again, there might be some differing opinions on like what would go into npm init versus maybe this tool and these standards, right? So this was kind of a way to unblock us and but yeah. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, so it sounds like to avoid bike shedding over every possible key in the package.json, you're like, here, just use this
Yeah.
this approach, and you can just layer your opinions on top of these like 7 or 8 that we don't think will ever or need to change much. So I guess basically the takeaway is that what's in npm init right now is probably the scope of npm init for the foreseeable future, and you can use this npm init capability to supplement with everything else you need, and that's where we
Yeah. Yeah, and the community has already done that. Like a lot of people have written their own templates and generators within it. And so like this is the opportunity for us to do that. Yeah, again, it seems the way that it is going to write when you run the command is going to seem a little bit more blessed because of just the nature of the branding of the PKG, right? Like it's going to seem like, oh, I'm going to start a package, right? And so that's what I thought was sort of the unique opportunity there, at least with the namespace. I think it aligns well with the rest of the work that this group is doing. So yeah, so it will look like I said, semi-blessed when you're actually running it, and yeah, and again, it relieves some of the burden of writing this tooling on just like the npm project, and sort of shifts that to be more collaborative and obviously owned by this group.
So I will admit I forgot that I was sharing my screen. So I went to pull up this diagram for me to reference because I had made this diagram thinking that, anyway, I wanted to present it during the meeting, but I wasn't quite ready for it yet. But I think this is sort of the way I see it, which is we are an opinion layer in the middle of a bunch of underlying pieces. One of those underlying pieces could, and I put this here only because this is a package that I actually own, but this could be npm init, this box. I'm not saying that's the way we want to go, but we could leverage npm init inside of this tooling, and then have our layer be really just opinions layering on top of npm init. So, opinionated input to npm init. Does that help clarify as well? Like how I see the layering, at least?
And so in that way, basically our layer could have defaults, then you could either just accept the default or override per prompt, and you could be like, I want all the defaults, but just change this one. So you go, yes, 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 edit, yes, 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 and be done.
Yeah, exactly. And so the way that I've built my demo code for this, it actually integrates even a layer deeper than that. So it's not just in the prompts that you can override it. The way that I'm working on this, and I can present the details of the way I've got this demo set up. But basically at this layer, you actually import the underlying packages, and you just literally override it right there. It doesn't even ask the user. Like you can just say like, look, I know, and this is where the create user package layer kind of comes in. Say we have a bunch of opinions here, and you have a bunch of opinions for your particular ecosystem, right? Maybe it's a team at your work, or maybe it's a specific type of package. Say you're writing a scaffolding package for a React project, or maybe a React component, right? You may just by default say, well, I want to always install React as a peer dep, right? Like that's like a really common thing. So you would be able to wrap our opinions. So it would come with support metadata and funding metadata and all these cool things that we've added. And then you on the top just said, oh, but I always want React as a peer dep, right? I always want, whatever, that my test script is always going to be Mocha, right? Or whatever. And you could layer those things on where like we wouldn't come with an opinion on test framework probably, right? Because again, that's not our domain. We want to, so anyway, the idea would be these opinions can be layered and each domain can sort of own them. But then if we do it well, I think they can overlay each other without getting overly complicated.
It seems like it's just, not to trivialize it, but it's like start with an object and then just spread a couple more objects on top of that, and then you get the composition of all of them at the end.
Yeah, kind of. That's, I think it can be that pretty much that easy. There's some devil's always in the details, but yeah.
But yeah, that's neat. So yeah, just cool. No, that's helpful. Just framing where we can kind of pick up from where npm kind of wants to stay small, which is fine, and I think that makes sense. So yeah, neat. The diagram helps as well. Do you think you would be able to link that in the chat?
This is actually in the pkg.js create repo already.
Okay.
So, well, I mean, I can link it, of course. I'm just sharing my screen, so it means I have to go. Let's see, where do I find the chat from? Screen share here, chat, there it is. Okay. Oh, I did not mean to click there. So this was a little bit jumping ahead. So maybe let's go back for just a second and talk through what we wanted to include. Does anybody have strong opinions on this list we have here? Or maybe not even strong opinions, just any ideas or thoughts? I know we put these contentious ones down at the bottom. My personal feeling here is, and part of the reason why I drew that diagram was that I think we can decompose just a bit more than just the one level where we have create-pkg. I think if we pull some of these things like the GitHub issue templates into a GitHub generator, maybe like create-pkg GitHub or something, we would then be able to iterate on those, decide what goes in those separately, and then, pull it into the general package generator later, or even keep it as an optional thing. One of the things I did. Oh, go ahead.
No, keep going. I apologize.
Well, I didn't diagram this in this diagram here, but I was actually thinking one thing we could say is that the PKG actually doesn't do anything with Git for you. Like that could be one option. And we actually just hoist this whole layer of generator boxes to the side. And so if a user's package wanted to wrap our opinions along with they're going to host their project on GitHub, they could then compose those two together, and create-pkg wouldn't necessarily do the Git stuff. That's one option here that I should have probably diagrammed because I think it would have made it maybe more clear.
Yeah, because it seems like from the list, there's like the things in package JSON, and then there's things that aren't in package JSON. And maybe like a phase one is, what can we do in package JSON? And then phase two is like, what do we want to do outside of actual file scaffolding, like your little Git package that does all the templates and stuff like that, So
I'm thinking actually this is the MVP to me. I feel like the MVP is index.js that just exports an object or whatever. A license, I think we need to do a lot more with license, because I think doing what npm init does isn't enough, which is fine. Not to say npm init's doing it wrong. I just mean I think we need to have maybe a list of good licenses that we can select from. But I think really actually even just this would be a good MVP. Right? This stuff is all about open source projects, but I actually think that this tool should be usable for closed source or, whatever. And these, maybe are optional.
So, I mean, and I was going to kind of mention this before, Wes, when you were talking, I think before about the composability, and still I guess my biggest concern with not having strong opinions about some of this stuff, and more defaults, means that it's going to be harder for people to adopt like a whole bunch of tools, or like it's just going to fragment things, right? Like, so like a strong default out the gate that's going to cover like it, if we look at the ecosystem, like how many folks are like, do we want to hit like the 80% type thing, or are we like and I would say that looking at the list, even that some of the contentious ones, it's like, yeah, like I probably want like a get ignore. I probably want like, you know, like those are the types of things where it's kind of like, okay, definitely I think I want a license. And sorry, the contributors, I'll update that, should be contributing. I think that that's also another thing that it's like, I think we want to err on the side of like the default that we want to present to the community should be a little bit more opinionated, because we want to like make, you know, the experience of becoming a maintainer, if this is like the first time you're creating a package, to be that a lot easier, and like you're set up from the get-go, like you're set up for your first contribution, and you haven't like have to tack on another like generator or scaffold to answer that question of what it means. And then the people that do know what they want to add, then it's like they can like customize beyond that. Like, so that's why like being a little bit more aggressive, I think, with our defaults might be more beneficial. And that's kind of like my own opinion on that.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and I fully agree. And I think actually maybe we should even lay out right at the top the primary constituency for this package is new package authors. We want the experience to be great for them. And the assumption is that the experienced package authors probably will not use it out of the box. They will probably wrap it and customize it and do some more.
They will do something crazy. They probably have their own generator, right? They probably have their own like,
and that's why
yeah.
I want to see this interop well with whatever their generator is. So they should be able to turn off all these flags that set up these things if they want to, you know. But yeah, I like that.
But if we go on that side, as you're saying, you want them to be able to customize it, then the effort that we're talking about is now split, right? Like it's like now we're trying to tailor to also the advanced user as well as the beginner user, right? Like, so it's like sure, we can do that, but it's always one of those cases like maybe we should just start with the focusing on what to get started, like focusing on that whoever that beginner is, and like the secondary effort could be what's the advanced use case, right? Like let's maybe start with the defaults. What's the best? Like focus on that so that like we can get started, and then like go from there.
Yeah, I do agree. I think though that this was the point of trying to do the decomposition exercise. For me, I think that if we try to do all the work inside create-pkg, it will be, I've done this before, so this is my personal experience. Making it into a monolith makes it really hard to reason about. You end up with like a 900-line file where it's doing all sorts of weird, you know, if this, then ask the user that. Like, so the decomposition I see is there's some base level like business logic. Read in the existing package JSON, set some defaults from it, then ask the user a couple of extra questions, and then write that package JSON. Like that's one unit of work. Read in an existing support file, ask the user some questions, write out a new support file. Like that's one unit. The get stuff, and this is why I was trying to decompose the license again. Like, right, so we could obviously write in our code, like in create-pkg, something that generates a license file and then puts it in the package JSON. But there's already stuff for that. Like, I don't know if this specific package name is what we want or implements what we want, but there's ecosystem things like licensee that we should probably leverage inside of this. So my point here was just that we need to think about the decomposition better than, because like, I mean, we could pump out this package with all of our opinions and just one huge hard-coded like single file like pretty quickly. But if we do that, at first will be a maintenance nightmare, And second means that those power users are just totally unused, can't use it. And that's me. I assume that's all of you, right? That's our first level of beta testers even here are probably all people who won't use it right out of the box. So I think that doing this a little bit upfront will actually make the product a lot better than just like diving in and making a beta quality, thing. I say beta quality, like a, really hacked it together kind of thing, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I mean, I'm thinking about it because in a way, I don't know if it makes sense because if we're thinking about who's the audience for this, and we're thinking if this is for beginners, is a contributing and a funding going to be even on their radar, right? Like, because I could understand that maybe a person authoring a package for the first time maybe doesn't know the nuances of picking a license, which I think we would all agree every project should have, or picking the right module type, like kind of the things in package JSON that would have a kind of a ripple effect on maybe the tooling that they then choose to use to author their component. Whereas the advanced use case, yeah, I'm making this project, because I have a wider vision for it, or it's already fully formed, and I, might want to add these things. So I guess in that sense, is there value in kind of distinguishing the user personas and figuring out, well, what would a beginner want, or maybe should only be presented with to a degree? Maybe that's just the scope of that is just stuff in package JSON, and then the more advanced user is all the extra repository files that you have listed, and then to make then the advanced user can still build off of what we do by default in package JSON, as opposed to presenting everybody with everything at
So
once.
I actually sort of see it as the opposite. Present less, make more decisions for the beginner. That includes throwing out a contributing code of conduct, probably GitHub Actions file that runs their tests. Like,
Yeah,
the beginner has no, in theory, they have so much less knowledge. They should be making no decisions for themselves. We should be making all of their decisions for them. And that would include all of the best practices.
include funding and all that stuff too.
I think those are opportunities to those are like teaching moments, right? Teachable moments where like throughout this prompting, you're showing opportunity, I guess, and I think definitely the funding one is interesting because it is one where this, again, it's like a teachable moment where that person then is getting an opportunity to learn about what could be in their future, right? Like if somebody doesn't know about the fact that some open source projects are being, they're getting contributions, donations, they're being funded in some way. I think that's really exciting as a beginner to be prompted for that and say, hey, I can set up this one little line, this field, and I might start to be able to get, donations or get paid for this work. So.
Is there maybe a distinction then between what we fill out by default, what we prompt for? Because I mean, you could certainly fill out a lot of stuff behind the scenes, even if you don't ask them for everything. So is it like?
Good, and I think that is one key thing that I really want to stress. Anything we can infer, the better. So like repository fields should just be filled in if they have a Git repository, like with a remote origin. Author should just be filled in based on their Git user, or maybe the first time they run it, it asks them and saves it off into their home directory. Like anything we can do to make the user experience like really stellar, we should absolutely be considering doing.
So maybe just to take a step, not back, but forward, I guess, kind of taking this list and then maybe making like a table about what essentially could be prompted versus inferred is a good idea, maybe. just taking this initial list. And then in that table, we could also define what we see as maybe being default versus not, and we can have a discussion that way. Because right now it's just a list. It's kind of hard to have all these conversations about how we want to segment it. And then the way in which we actually go, you know, I know Wes, you've created that graph, and like how we actually implement, I feel like we'll spawn out of that table, right? Like we'll spawn out of, okay, well, which package do we need to create for the license work? Because we decide that that won't be like in the default like generator, it won't be in that default. Might be good to do it that way. Is just like take this list, copy it, put it into like a Excel or like just a Google Sheets, and then we'll just go and start to decide whether or not we want something to be, or how we might infer it. Like author, we might try to get from like your git config, your global git config will just automatically pre-fill that, and somebody could say yes or no. They could change it like during the prompt. That might be a good exercise because we only have about 15 minutes left here.
That's what I was going to say. I actually think that's a good thing to do asynchronously. We can just, because I think that we can all fill in comments and have a little table in here in the issue and probably do that asynchronously. Things that I think that the time is better used on the call to plan to see if we align on some structure like this, since that's more of a discussion point, and then we can hash out the details async. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
This sort of a decomposition, do people think this is a good direction? Do you think I've over engineered this? Like, you know, what are people's thoughts here?
I mean, I like it. It's actually kind of funny when we were talking about like the repo files, because a couple of weeks ago, I made my own little package where I could basically run npx and point to an existing directory project I have, and it'll copy like all those. I called it copy dots, and it'll just copy all the dot files from one directory into whatever directory I'm running npx. And so in that composability, is there a way to either chain that with something you're already using, so that, I like the discussion around that, because I guess, because I think Darcy made that point, is like, are the advanced power users, like maybe if they're doing a lot of packages at work, they might already have a quick and dirty generator. You don't need to pull down a yeoman just to do some quick scaffolding and then run an npx on it, across your organization. And so I think that option is nice.
Yeah, so maybe I should give my little actual like CLI demo that I built. It's super rough, but it is effectively structured in this exact way. It's just missing the create-pkg. I just have my user package, which combines a couple of things. Let me find where I where did I do this? So I have my personal scoped create package thing, and I think I have a temp directory I can run it in. So it's basically said it's like effectively npm init. There's a few details because I was hacking this together this morning, and I recognize that it actually does under the hood infer the package name from the directory. It's just there's a bug the way I'm composing it. It's throwing it out. So again, it also infers. Let me actually do the decomposed part. Man, I can't type there. Oh.
It's got to be a name for that syndrome where as soon as you start screen sharing and you're typing, you forget how to type. There's got to be something.
So this package also imports the create-pkg JSON. And so underlying here, see how it infers temp from the fact that temp directory has version, infers my username from my git config. because I'm not running the composed version, it doesn't do anything with the Git repository it's in, but the composed version does. Keywords, type, what's a package? So this is running
Ooh, how does that work? Would you do comma separated in the dependencies?
Yeah, I should have probably done that to show. It does. It supports comma separated, and it actually supports any npm package arg compatible string. So it could be a Git repo or a file path or whatever. It uses npm package arg to parse.
Could you just do space delimited versus comma separated?
Sure, we could.
Just because that would line up with like what install does, right?
Yeah, I guess there's. Yeah, it would. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not opinionated on that. It's just the way it was. So anyway, see, output package JSON with some stuff. That same package.
How did it get the versions? Did it run an npm install behind the scenes or?
Yep. Okay. So, and this is where I think we could integrate better with npm here and do like Arborist, and because it actually runs two separate execs, one to do the save dev, one to do the save, but anyway, and then create package, again, there's the bug that it just doesn't pick it up, but it also asks GitHub repo, which is inferred from the package name. And then I'll show you the code and the behind the scenes. These are the compositional factors here. It actually has hard coded my GitHub username.
Nice.
So that, and then it will create that as the remote origin. It also asks primary branch. Here we go. See, it inferred Wesley Todd and TMP there. So that's my thing. This grabs the git ignore lists from GitHub. They have like a repo that has standard git ignores for these different things. And then, so this is composing together that create package JSON, and then another one called create git, and then applying, and of course erroring because, why? So it also has, it tried to push at the end to my repo, but I'd never created the GitHub repo. Oh, also has nice things like runs the npm validate package name, which I think is one of your all packages, right, from npm. Anyway,
I have no clue. I'm gonna have to look that up. I just run a bash like command for that. Like that's.
Yeah, so I'll rerun these really quick just because so I added no push. Oh, it's still. Anyway, details to work out. I hacked this together this morning, so sorry that it's erroring every time. But basically, as you can see, it composed together some different things that weren't just part of the package JSON thing. And now I have a branch called main. I have a commit called test commit. I have a git ignore, which has all of the stuff that it pulled from. Whoa, what did I just do there? Well, anyway. I think I just closed the tab on accident, but let me pull up the code so you can see sort of what that looks like. So basically I have this wrapper library. I import create package JSON and create git. I spread their options into my options. So I have this, this is tightly coupled to Yargs and Inquirer. So all of the options here, so for prompt, for example, literally just gets passed straight to Inquirer. And then I do my little infer. So for the default, I say, I take my input and I grab my GitHub org and my GitHub repo. And then for my remote origin, I'm just, string concatenating a GitHub remote. I do some standard defaults. So my packages always use standard and Mocha. I also add a additional git ignore for my package lock. And then all I do is call create package JSON with my ops and create git with my ops. And then and you were saying you have a thing that copies all your templates. This just all it does is look at I have like a template directory, which just has like a README and a couple of things, and it copies them. So this is the full implementation of the user layer. And all it does is compose together options from create git, options from create package JSON, and then write out some files. And it even relies on those for their business logic. So the npm install, the writing out of the git ignore, the fetching of the git ignore, like all of those are sort of decoupled into their respective domains. And then this just sort of pulls them together. So this is sort of the structure that I have, where I have a concrete implementation to go with that diagram.
This is super nice, Wes.
Mm-hmm. Killer.
So just ship it and
I mean, there's a ton of details to work out. Like if we like this as a technical implementation, then I'm happy to start scaffolding out what it is. So, I should also add, this exports a few key things. So first I have a main export, which literally is just an async function that takes user input. So this is the JavaScript API. So it's just a single async function. It takes all of those options as literal, just an object. And then uses this this package called opta, which wraps inquirer and yargs, and it generates the yargs instance. So you can see here, it also exports a CLI. So here I just say with my init options, which is the opta thing, I call .cli, and I give it a default command of main, and that's all I do. Opta handles translating all of the configs up here to flags. So for example, right now, where's my, here we go. So let's see. What's up? So you have a, so this is the entire CLI from both the create git, the create package JSON, and mine. So as you can see, push, commit all, additional rules, those all come from create git. Package name, package version, description, author, those all come from create package JSON. And you see here, create git, use GitHub org and GitHub repo. These come from me. So here, default Wesley Todd. As you can see, they're sort of not, it takes literally the string that you have for the option name, but all you have to do to change that is say flag key right? So these are just yargs. This is just a yargs instance. So basically you can pass anything, and they kind of compose together, so you can hack them a bit and give, you know, like for example, default ISC here, actually under the hood, this is just a yargs default description. And the default is actually coming from the prompts from Inquirer. Anyway, so there's like a few different interactions here that I've sort of had to iron out what the user experience should look like. But a nice thing to illustrate here is if you pass it on the command line, it doesn't ask you the question. See how it skipped package name?
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can basically compose together.
So like this can become like, even if you want to share this as a, you can like share a template basically through flags.
Literally, that's exactly what I'm doing in a bunch of my stuff. So I actually have, I have a couple of other things that aren't open source where it basically just does what you're talking about, which is like composes them together and then has a few flags that like mostly are mostly required. Anyway, yeah. So yeah. And so basically everything that comes as a flag comes as a prompt. Well, not everything. Some of them I just say prompt false. So like current working directory, like would never make sense to ask the user, right? Like presumably just be process.cwd, but you can also, you know, do, you know, whatever sort of weird stuff.
Cool.
So that was the technical demo of that. So I have effectively a working decomposition based on that, this diagram. So I own create-pkg. I also own create-git. I do not own create-gitignore. I do not own create-github. I think we could discuss whether we want create support to just be maybe part of pkg.js support and we just import it. I also don't own any of these other domains. But my thinking was if, like, I'm happy to make create-pkg work with all of these as with no opinions. And then we would just call create-pkg with our opinions from here. If people like that structure, because then the idea is if somebody else wants to come with their own entirely separate opinions, we've already done the legwork to make it really easy for them to generate the package JSON. All they have to do is just skip our package and just directly call this one.
Yeah, this makes sense to me. Okay. I like this, yeah. I want to know what our next steps look like. We've got like a minute, left here.
Yeah, well, we started a little bit late, so, you know. So next step, so I think there are, we need to set up a scaffold in create-pkg for this. With it won't have like all the business logic, but we can at least nail in the starter ones. We need to then also do the same thing in pkg.js support. Well, actually, that doesn't need to be part of the next steps. That could be something we do once we nail down the basics. And we need to decide whether or not like this tier is something we want to bundle in. I you know, maybe it is. And then we need to make the issue comment, which has the table where we can then go in and really detail in, these are, you know, features that we think are really good for beginners. They should be prompted for, like, you know, that sort of work. So who wants to take on the, I guess, are those the three things?
Yeah, I'm down to take on the organization of this, like creating a project, even maybe like a project board on the pkg.js org for this work. And then so that we know like who can own what in terms of issues, PRs, and stuff going forward. Yeah, actually, if you want, Wes, you can just
no,
create
I don't want
project
to do it right now. I'll let you take it because I've never done this before and I don't want to do it on stream because.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can do some of the organizing around like thoughts and actions from this discussion, especially like that table of taking your diagram and then like also like scaffolding out like what that would look like, and then we can have that async conversation about what we think would be like a prompt or like not, and what the defaults would be too. Like we can do that in that kind of like matrix. So I can take that away. I think the initial work, it sounds like you've already done, and looks like you've already done a bunch of that. So pushing that up is going to be key, so other people can collaborate probably.
Yeah, so I'll get the, I definitely will take on the first commit of the like actual JS part, because then I can just copy and paste what I have in and delete all the like stuff that's centered around me. And then that will get us at least a place where people can start making PRs against it to add, you know, individual options and the business logic behind them and all that. Because then once we get the scaffold in, I think a lot of the legwork will be writing tests. Like that to me, so far, having done a bunch of these little generators, the hardest part is like testing all the different input options and making sure they work together well. So I have some scaffolding I can put in for that as well. But if anybody wants to, you know, again, this would be, I think, a really good opportunity for other folks to come in and step up and make it better. Because I know some of my tests around this stuff are really wonky.
I don't mind what I could help with some of the test scaffolding. I've actually been using a little technique in some of my projects, specifically for CLI projects, that basically just use a little node magic, so you can effectively create like a almost a hermetic environment to run your command line in, and you can basically like take my command line but run it in this directory. So like if you ever seen the Webpack repo, they have test cases. It's basically like every directory is like an individual Webpack config, and like input A.js and input B.js, and they run Webpack on that and make sure that like input C. And so I have something like that, not as like a package, but I've done a lot of that, and it's really helpful for testing. So you can basically create like 10 test case directories and be like option A, option B, all the options together, and you can isolate their individual output. So yeah, if you set up some repo scaffolding, I can maybe tinker around with that, maybe finally publish my little test bed project. But either way, I think it would be nice. It's a
That
nice
sounds awesome, because a lot of the wonkiness, yeah, is around those kind of things, like getting test cases that cover all the different input options, like especially when you have a file system dependency, right? Like we have to run this on an existing directory and it needs a package JSON in it, like those kind of things. And the package JSON has to have these fields to test whether or not it, you know, loads them from there and then lets you override them correctly. Like all of those weird things, there will be a lot of tests involved. So that'll be good. Yeah. Even break that out into maybe, you know, maybe we can get a hack together first version without a lot of tests, and then throw in, you know, tests, more robust testing as we go. I like that.
Yeah. I can maybe. Yeah, just on the also on the test point, I can also help if you want. I do have some experience, a lot now, testing things on the NPM ecosystem. So if you want to share this first boilerplate, like I can take a look, and maybe I can, help out to bring maybe some more opinionated stuff, like using TAP or whatever other framework we want to use for the test. But I can definitely like help review and maybe contribute to the test too.
That sounds awesome. One thing we did discuss at one point on the pkg.js org is like, I scaffolded a bunch of stuff with like Mocha and standard because that's just like what I use. But I guess at least a few other people have strong opinions against that. So I'm not strongly opinionated. I will be happy to use whatever folks want. But yeah, I think so. First step is I will put together a introductory PR that just has like a rough outline of you know what the code I already have is, and get that set up. And then, you know, once we get approvals on it, we'll follow the same, you know, process that we always do for the pkg.js stuff. And then that'll set the foundation so you all can start, you know, contributing in all the other ways.
Yeah. Feel free to add me to review these PRs, yours, Wes, and also Owen, submit one for the test. I'd be interested in that.
I will make sure everybody on this call gets added to the org because we have to have commit rights and stuff. So I'll get that set up.
Cool.
Or actually, maybe what I should do is anybody who wants to be involved, go make a comment over here, just so that I don't miss anybody, because I'll probably not do it right after this. I think I have a meeting.
Right.
I should actually stop sharing my screen so I can go check my calendar. Oh, and Michael's been on as an attendee the whole time, I bet. I haven't been paying attention. Sorry, Michael.
I think he wasn't able. Oh, there he is.
Oops. No, only since one. I messed up the time, so sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Sorry for.
I'll go back and take a look at the recording afterwards. But
yeah, I think we nailed down pretty much what we need to do. The next step, Darcy is going to make a project board with some tasks on it. One of the tasks is really fleshing out like each of the options, what we think the default should be, who those are targeted at, that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to do a first push of some scaffolding for the code, because I've got some prior work on this. And then once those two things are done, we'll just start divvying up like slices. So there's like a ton of testing work that'll need to be done. And then like basically in theory, we could add every option as a separate PR and people could just work in parallel on the different options. So yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll try and skim through the video to catch up.
Yeah.
All right.
Is everybody good with that then? So yeah, I guess we'll all
solid
come back later. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you, Wes. Thanks for
talk to you later. Bye.
Everybody.
Thanks for organizing the quest.
No problem.
Bye.